have no audio.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon again.
Yes, good afternoon. I can hear you now. Thank you.
All righty. This is Meet the Candidate, and we have the pleasure of speaking today with Miss Julee Tate Flood. She's the Republican Party nominee for the NC Court of Appeals, Judge Seat 8. And just going to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'll go into some easy questions.
Okay, thank you so much. As you said, my name is Julee Flood, and I am a candidate for Seat 8 of the Court of Appeals. I have extensive appellate court experience. I have worked for 9 different jurists over my legal career. And what I have done for those judges and justices is I have analyzed and researched and drafted judicial opinions at the appellate level. So I have written hundreds and hundreds of judicial opinions on behalf of the jurists for whom I've worked. Of those jurists, I've worked for 4 Democratic jurists and 5 Republican jurists. And so I believe that my approach to the law and my apolitical approach and my textualist approach has allowed me to work with many wonderful people and to have the goal of getting at what the law says and how it applies to a particular case.
Okay. So what are your qualifications for this position?
Yes, well, again, I have about over the past 20 years, I've worked for those 9 different appellate jurists, and exactly what I am doing for those judges and justices, what I have done for them in multiple different courts, has been exactly what a judge does. So I have been an advisor to judges who are brand new on the bench who have contacted me to say, will you please bring your institutional knowledge and your expertise back into the court to help them come onto the bench and become familiar with the appellate process. I have worked with judges who had a backlog of cases and needed my ability, capabilities, and expertise for finishing up large volumes of cases in order to meet their case output before their retirement deadline. I have worked on all kinds of cases because that's what our appellate courts do. They handle criminal cases, civil cases, business law cases, industrial commission cases, child and family cases, and I've handled them all at the appellate level. So it is very different than what happens at a trial court, which might be more familiar to what your listeners are used to. We don't have parties arguing before us. We are an error-correcting court, and we study and we review and we look back to the record and the facts as they come before the court to assess and analyze whether some sort of error has occurred at the trial court. So I have extensive experience. Most of my legal career has focused in on appellate court work. And so from day one, I'm ready for the job.
Okay. All righty. So what makes you want to serve?
I want to serve because first and foremost, I love appellate work. My very first job in law school was working for the Chief Justice of the Maine Supreme Court. And at the time that I went to work in his chambers, I really didn't know much about appellate court. With just 1 year of law school under my belt, I didn't really know what I would be doing. And the ability to dig into the law and to try to really discern what the law says, what the law means, and then to turn that into a written opinion drafted for the justice on which people would rely, that case being the most important for those people, and to just realize that in some way I was helping to affect in a positive way these people's lives. Since then, I worked for many other jurists and my passion never waned. I have been asked multiple times to run, but I needed it to mount a statewide campaign is quite a scheduling challenge, and meeting people is great. I just wanted to make sure that at the time that I made a run for the court, that I was ready to be able to give it everything I have with all of my schedule and all my intellect, all of my capabilities to work my very hardest on the race for the Court of Appeals.
Okay. Everything has become politicized. What role does party play in an appellate court or any court?
Well, first and foremost, I would say that the role of political party should be irrelevant. And I use the word of having my apolitical perspective to the law. Again, I think the fact that I am committed to, when I walk through those court doors, whether I'm walking through them now as an attorney or whether I have the honor of walking through those doors with the title judge behind my name, I do not walk in thinking of a particular political party. I walk in thinking, what does the law say? How does it apply in this instance? Having said that, this is a political process in which we must act. Our state legislature has determined that judicial candidates, appellate judicial candidates, run aligned with a particular party. And so we do act within that party system. To the extent that that gives voters information, then I am bound to act within that system. However, again, with 20 years of experience off and on within the courts, no matter which appellate court I've been with, whether it's a federal level or a state level, whether it's a court of appeals or a Supreme Court level at the state, I have never gotten the sense that either I or any of my attorney colleagues, nor any of the judges or justices have walked in thinking that because of their political party that they needed to act in a certain way. So I believe that politics, once in the court, should not play a role whatsoever.
Okay. How do we know a court is running well? How can we tell that things are going the way that they should?
Well, one thing that I really believe firmly in is that justice delayed is justice denied. And so I think that a court that is running efficiently and effectively is a court which is in a timely manner is resolving issues for parties. Now, that word timely can be interpreted in many different ways. By the time cases get to the Court of Appeals, those cases have sometimes been within a system for years and years and years. At the Court of Appeals, however, we do not have a backlog, a large backlog that I would consider a backlog at all or unreasonable. We have a goal of 90 days or less. That's not a cast in stone, because even broader of the goal, larger above that goal, is the goal to get it right. And sometimes the three judges on a particular panel need time to research further, need time to have their attorneys research further and come to an answer. But I believe that to say directly that the Court of Appeals is functioning efficiently and effectively, I see that with my own eyes. I believe that the cases are being turned around with excellence and with promptness.
Okay. What are your expectations when in-person court, now that in-person court has resumed, what are your expectations when the court resumes and the impact that COVID had on it?
So the Court of Appeals never stopped working. As I mentioned before, we do not tend to have parties standing before us. We don't have witnesses. We don't have arguments going on. We don't have a jury. What we do have is typically an attorney for each side that one will argue for an appellant and one will argue for an appellee. So even during COVID, there were not enough direct interactions that things needed to be shut down. And even when the court, without COVID even being an issue whatsoever, out of the 12 cases that a particular panel would hear in a 2-week period, some of them are heard, most of them are heard on what we call on briefs. And what that means is the judges are just reviewing a written record and working with their attorneys and team members on that written record. So really only 1 or 2 cases per panel per 2 weeks might even need to be orally argued. Now, I'll put a refining statement on that. During COVID, My understanding is that it was up to parties to request being able to be heard in an online video type of format, video streaming type of format. And so I don't know if that option will just continue in there, COVID or not, as to whether parties can choose to be heard video format. But most of the cases at the Court of Appeals, most of the work is still done with what we call on briefs. And so we continued operating efficiently and effectively even during COVID.
Okay. So, so when we speak about streaming, how familiar are you now with the new technology that's been implemented since COVID? Are you comfortable, like with, well, will you be doing briefs, streaming briefs that can be uploaded, and so that a client, if they wanted to see the decision or hear it themselves, they would have access to it, or will they have access to it?
We have an excellent technology team, and there is a full team of technology people who run any of this type of streaming hearings for both the Appellate Court of Appeals and for the Supreme Court. It is not something that the judges themselves deal with running or turning on that streaming or turning off that streaming. And so the judges are not having to manipulate or deal with that technology. Having said that, on a personal basis, I use streaming quite often. We meet both for court just discussions and court meetings. It's efficient for people not to necessarily have to travel long distances. And so, like everyone, I have worked at adapting and learning more and more every day, and have the occasional glitch like everyone does. And certainly am perfectly comfortable with that technology. And I'm thankful for the technology team at the court.
Okay. Well, what experience do you bring to the appellate court that makes you the best qualified candidate? I know I see it here, but
Yes. So again, I think what's unique, I don't know that there's ever been a candidate who has run having already written hundreds of judicial opinions. And I think that is highly unique. And the perspective that one takes at an appellate level is a retrospective perspective, trying to determine if an error has been made. So we review cases with certain lenses, certain standards of review. And so even many trial court judges, people who have been, some people come to the appellate court with a trial court background. They are typically one judge making a decision on witnesses and facts before them. That's a very different skill set, perhaps, than working with a panel of three to come to consensus and writing effectively what's the equivalent of like a term paper for 12 cases every 2 weeks. And so that is a unique experience as well. I have been in-house counsel for a private sector business, so I have extensive business law experience. And that is rather unique. I believe there are one or two other judges on the Court of Appeals who have some business background, but I have an extensive business background. And where the court hears such diverse cases, I believe that's helpful. I also have a doctorate, a PhD in higher education law and policy. And I also believe that's unique to the court to have kind of this unique specialization area within an education law and policy background. So the extent that the court is kind of made up of maybe a fabric quilt, if you will, of all these different experiences that each judge brings, I think my experiences are unique and valuable. And the final thing that I would add in there is that I've been a law professor at several different institutions, teaching all different types of law. Being a law professor also requires that I am able to really dig into the background and very deeply in assessing the meaning of the words and the background of the law, and kind of take that academic intellectual approach. So teaching, business experience, working for the appellate court currently, all of those things keep me very current in multiple areas of law. I haven't zeroed in on just one specific thing for a long term of practice. I have facility with and currency in many, many different types of law with a special focus on a few different types of law because of my teaching, business, and appellate work.
Okay. What makes you the right pick for the appellate court? I know that your experience has made you the right pick, or will be the right pick. But what do I need to know if I'm going to cast a ballot? What would I need to know to make you the right choice when I'm casting my ballot?
Again, I would focus on experience and the appellate court experience that is quite unique to my background and being ready to serve the citizens of North Carolina from day one. I would focus on my currency and diverse ability with many areas of the law. I would focus on my apolitical perspective, having worked for both Democratic judges and Republican judges and being asked by many more. My politics have never been a litmus test for someone asking me to work with them. Rather, my skill set is what has driven many judges to ask me to come and work with them as an attorney. I am principled, I'm honest, have integrity. I have a desire to serve. I serve in my community. I serve the bar. I serve students who are new to the legal profession. And so I believe all of those things combined make me an excellent pick for the Court of Appeals.
Okay. Just want to let our listening audience know that this Friday, October 14th, it will be the deadline for voter registration. So that if you're wanting to participate, please get out and register. I will say that early voting was going to start Thursday, one-stop early voting. And if you didn't get a chance to register, you can come October 1st through Saturday, November the 5th, you can register to vote. We do know that early voting determines a race, so that if you get out early, a candidate will know whether or not how they're doing. Also, the general election day, which we hope everybody will get to vote before that time, is going to be November the 8th. So just well, let's see. Tell us how a person will appeal can file for an appeal. They have to have had a trial, and then they're unhappy maybe with the results. Now, no one would, if a person wins a case, because I try to explain, I have not been part of that system. But if a person, if they win a case, they would never make an appeal. A person who would appeal is a person who is unhappy with the outcome.
That is correct. And we call that person the appellant, the person who is appealing.
Okay.
As far as how that happens, you mentioned a trial, and again, some people are more familiar with what we might see on television as a trial, where there is a jury and there are witnesses and there are two opposing attorneys. But there can also be what we call a bench trial, where the case is actually heard by a trial court judge, either the district court or the superior court judge. So it can either be a trial where it's just occurring between parties and the judge that is hearing that case, or it can be what we're more familiar with as a jury trial. And different cases are heard in different ways. Typically, when that trial is over, if someone is unhappy with the result, they have an automatic right to appeal to the Court of Appeals. And when I say automatic, there are some restrictions and stipulations on that, but we can't really get into that in
Okay.
the amount of time that we have. But that's how a case goes to the appellate court.
Okay. All righty. Well, we're coming up for our first break.
Okay.
And things are going great. You're giving us a lot of information. It seems like we're going over the same questions.
Yes.
But we want to let the listening audience know that you're very qualified for the position.
Okay.
And the questions that I have brings us back to that. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
This is Larry Hall.
I can't hear you. Yes. No, sorry. I still can't hear you.
Okay, I am hosting. Okay, Renee Boyston Hill, Miss Julie Flood. She's the Republican Party nominee for the NC Court of Appeals, Seat 8. And right before the break, we were talking about how a case would get to the appeals. And does an appeal have to be filed by a lawyer, or can, if as a layperson, could I file for my own appeal?
So a layperson can file their own appeal. That is called a pro se appeal if someone is not represented by an attorney. There are rules of appellate procedure. And so long as those rules, they're all in our statute books. And so long as those rules are filed, a person can represent themselves, can appeal pro se. And those rules explain what documents have to be submitted and what has to be in the person's brief or the write-up of the case, what had happened and why they believe it should be appealed. So there are certain rules that one must follow, but it does not have to be filed by an attorney.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What is your Distal philosophy, and how will it support your mission on the appellate court?
Sure. My judicial philosophy is one of being a textualist. And it's pretty straightforward, and it's just not difficult to understand. Textualist means that I pay attention to what the words say. I start with the text of a document. So whether that document is the Constitution, whether that document is a statute that is written by our legislature, whether that document is a rule of an administrative agency, I start by looking at that text and I consider what the plain meaning of that text is. I consider that our language, our English words have meaning, and I consider what that meaning is. And textualism is a form, kind of a fine point on the form of originalism, meaning when I'm looking at that document, I'm trying to discern what did our state legislature consider? What did the legislature mean by using these particular words? How that influences me and how I work every day for the Court of Appeals is that I give those words their plain meaning when I'm considering what I'm writing. And I believe that that's very beneficial, because if I'm going by what those words mean, even if I don't like the words, if I wish the law were written differently, what those words mean and my decision, whether I'm drafting for another judge or if I'm making that decision on the panel of judges, if I'm honored to be elected, what that means is what I'm writing then brings consistency and predictability to the law. It also means that I am respecting the Madisonian principles of separation of powers, because if someone doesn't like what I've written, but I've written it based on the law, then that citizen knows that their pathway to changing that is by going through their elected legislative representative. Judges are meant to apply the law, not to make the law as to what they wish it said.
Okay.
The legislature is meant to make the law. And so I believe that I have a proven record of that and have exemplified that over and over again. And the way that that's shown is by the fact that both Democratic jurists and Republican jurists have asked me and continue to ask me to work with them as an attorney. And I believe that's because I'm just going by what the law says, not by what Julie Flood thinks it should say.
Okay. Okay. What about your style then that will make you a good appellate judge? What about your style?
Yeah, I think that appellate judges have to be good at digging deeply into things. It is not a quicker reaction such as some of the trial judges might need to have. It's a different skill set. And so I thoroughly enjoy researching, analyzing the intellectual academic consideration of these words and the meaning of the words. I enjoy writing, as exemplified by hundreds of judicial opinions. I spend a lot of time thinking and writing. I've also written a book and a dissertation, and I've been an academic teaching in law school. So I clearly enjoy the intellectual rigor, and I've demonstrated that I have that rigor. Just as importantly, I think that I have a very good ability to work well with others. And that's important, first of all, because every judge has what would be kind of considered like a mini law firm within chambers, meaning that there are multiple attorneys. There are multiple very bright law students who are extremely capable. And we work within that chambers to challenge one another's thinking. And so it's not kind of that I always have to be right. It's more that I have to bring my very best input, but I also have to be able to listen to other people's input, because the goal is to get it right, but to get it right as a team working and really challenging one another to do what's right for that case and for the citizens. And then ultimately, the judge in that chamber is taking it to the two other judges on which they sit, with whom they sit on the current panel. So those three judges then also have to work towards voting on how that case is going to come out, and then ultimately each signing on to that ultimate opinion. And so my overall comment here is that it needs to be a very team approach. And I think that I've shown that over and over in all sorts of judicial chambers. I also show that within the business that I own with 60 employees. I work to nurture and to help and to discuss and to keep open communication. And I've also employed that as a professor, a very open door approach, and working to help my students learn how to learn, not to just force feed them information. And all of those things come together to say that I think that's very much a key part of my personality, is being able to work really well with broad groups of people.
So did you have a primary, or were you primaried this time, or?
I was not. I was so fortunate not to be primaried. I got out there early on and advocating for my skills and experience. And thankfully, I was not primaried.
Okay, so tell us then, how can someone, or where could you use help at this point in your campaign?
First of all, I think voter education is crucial, and I am just so thankful for this opportunity to speak with you and the multiple media opportunities and group opportunities. I'm not just speaking to people of one group or political persuasion. I'm trying to do senior citizens and chambers of commerce and all sorts of different business groups, because I think in the past, people have not paid as much attention to the judicial races. So just being educated, because if people are educated, they are then more likely to share that education and information with their friends. I believe that we have to have that interest in the judicial races because they are very important. If anyone would like to help with the campaign in terms of signs, or if they just have more questions, they can connect through my website, which is juleeflood.com. And Julie is spelled with 2 E's, no I.
Okay. All righty. So when we come back from after this first break, I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself. I think I have, real quick, do you think there should be term limits in the appellate courts?
Well, there actually are. It's an 8-year term, and that's how our legislature has set it up. And so again, the legislature has established those terms, and we are bound by those terms. And that is the way that things are. There's also a term limit on the ultimate age of retirement. And so that is the way that that our system is set up, and it works well to me, in my opinion.
Okay. All right. We're coming up for the last break. And then when we do resume, again, I'm going to ask you to tell us something that we don't know about you. Again, early voting is about to start,
this is Dr. Benjamin Chavis, president of the National Association of the Black Press in America. I was born and raised in North Carolina and saw the gains we made in 2020, but I know we've got unfinished business. The time is now to increase resources for our community and advocate for what we need by voting in this election. Early voting begins October the 20th. Get 3 people from your community to vote with you. Visit safevoternc.org for more information. Paid for by the North Carolina Black Alliance.
Election Day is November 8th. Early voting begins October 20th. Do you know the candidates who are campaigning for our vote? Awesome Radio is hosting a nonpartisan candidate forum October 11th, Tuesday, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at Pitt Community College, the Goes Student Center. All candidates have been invited. This candidate forum is free and open to the public. This forum is designed for voter education and for us to get to know the candidates up close and personal before we cast our vote. That's Tuesday, October 11th, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at Pitt Community College. If you have questions for the candidates, email them to us, admin@wbisawesomeradio.org, or inbox on social media. Visit our website for more information. To volunteer for this event, contact us 252-756-3137. This is another Awesome Radio community event.
And welcome back to Meet the Candidate. My name is Renee Borston Hill, and I'm hosting and having the pleasure to be with Miss Julee Flood. She's a Republican Party nominee, NC Court of Appeals for seat 8. And just want to ask you, Miss Flood, I see, of course, tell us a little bit about you. Are you married? Do you have children?
Sure. Yes, I'd be happy to share that with your listeners. I am married. I have been married for 37 years to my college sweetheart, and we have 4 adult sons.
Okay.
And my 4 adult sons are married. So I have 4 beautiful, kind, accomplished daughters-in-law. I call them my daughters in love. And I also have 5 grandchildren. And so my family life is very rich, very special. Our sons and their families all live very close by to where we live in Holly Springs. Foundational to my personal life is I'm a Christian. My faith undergirds everything that I do. I believe that it informs my desire to have integrity and strong principles and to do what the law says and to act justly and treat people fairly and kindly and without favor in the court system, meaning to be a fair, just person ruling on things through the eyes of the law. And so that is a little bit about my personal life. I'm happy to answer any other questions about that.
Okay, then tell us something that we don't know about you. Well, I know we didn't know you had all this big family that you've had time to have it in your work.
Right.
Time to have 4 grown sons and daughters in love, and you say 5 grandchildren.
5 grandchildren, yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. And they're
what would y'all do as fun? Would you go camping? What do y'all do as a family together?
Yes. Well, as a family, we've always been great outdoors people in terms of we enjoy walking, hiking, family outings. One thing that we started doing a lot during COVID was to meet outdoors at parks, and it has remained one of our favorite things, just kind of bringing a picnic lunch and just sort of hanging out at the wonderful parks. I love to ride horses. I don't get to do nearly as much of it as I wish, but it's something that I just really enjoy. I also enjoy Zumba fitness classes, just to kind of go and try to shake out all the cobwebs of thinking all day and enjoy activity that way. But just I'm just very passionate about family time. And even though with a campaign that family time is more limited than it typically is, I certainly can see the broader purpose of wanting to serve the state in which my children live, which my grandchildren live, and will live for many years to come, and anything that I can do to give of my skills and my talents to support a strong legal system. I am all about giving and trying to do that.
Right. So since I see here that you wrote a book on law, well, What type of book did you write? A book? You said you wrote a book.
Yes. Well, it's a real page turner, I tell you. No, it's a book that I was asked to write for essentially for Cornell Press. And there had been a book that had been done on tenure discrimination in the courts. And it was done in the 1990s. And Cornell wanted some sort of update to the laws of tenure decisions that are made in higher education. And because I was pursuing my PhD and doing quite a bit of research in the law of that area, when the person who had written the initial book was asked to update it, he said that he really didn't feel that with all the explosion in the legal cases and the laws, he was not an attorney, and he believed he needed an attorney to take the lead on that. And so the book, that was sort of the foundation of it. But what, as the lead author, what the direction that I kind of took the book in was really on managing risk in higher education faculty decisions. So there's a risk for institutions who don't follow their own rules and who don't treat the faculty candidates, the faculty employees, maybe according to their own rules and their own systems. And I looked first at the cases within the courts to see when things had gone wrong, and then tried to turn that into a proactive viewpoint of the institutions need to do these certain things. And here's some guidelines for the faculty members who are experiencing trying to go for tenure within the system. So, and it was also written with a legal mind being part of it, my own input to the book, direction to the book, to where counsel for the faculty members or counsel for the universities also benefit from the book. So it was on managing risk in faculty employment.
Okay, so is the book is it still being used, or will you be writing another book?
I primarily did the book because I was asked to. I prefer writing articles such as law review articles, which are also highly scholarly, but I don't know that I would put my time and efforts into actually producing a book again, but it was a great experience. I'm happy to say that I did that. As far as it being in use, it's not a big bestseller, but it is being used in a lot of academic circles, in academic circles of higher education law and policy type coursework, in order to review those the laws, and again by counsel who are dealing with clientele within that, who might be experiencing that situation, whether those clients be faculty members or whether it be the higher education institution. So it was a great experience. I think the book has been useful, and it's not high on my list to write another book.
Okay.
But thanks for asking.
Now, how does a family get into the appeals? It's after the decision is made in court. Like, say they have to decide for children. How is a child properly represented if the family brings a case to the appeals court, the appellate court? Am I asking a good question? Does appellate courts get involved with family matters?
Right. I respect that question. So typically at the trial court, if a family is in the trial court, it might be because of there's so many different things within family law that could get that case into the court. It could be a divorce situation to where the parents are arguing over anything from financing to child custody to who gets more time to, pensions. There are so many different things that a couple, if they're going through a challenge that way, that they can go to court about. Cases also get there because of child abuse, neglect, dependency. So if there are parents in the community who are not doing the appropriate job as parents, something like Youth and Family Services might have a report, and that starts the whole system and the whole process. And a lot of times there are many, many years of trying to get parents help and support that they need, education, nutrition, all different types of support services. Ultimately, whether it's coming because of a family dispute, or if it's becoming to the court because of abuse or neglect or dependency. Those cases are all considered family law type of cases. And so they come to the court in very different ways and for very different reasons. Whatever happens at the trial court, then again, if someone is unhappy, if they're unhappy with their amount of custody that was granted in the decision, if they're unhappy with the resources they were granted, if someone's parental rights were limited until they get the help that they need, but they're unhappy with that, they would appeal then to the appellate court. So there's not one easy answer because the cases come in so many different ways, but once it reaches the Court of Appeals, then again, we're considering all of the record that was created, and we're considering what has happened before it got to us. And then we consider the law and the facts to consider whether the trial court got that correct, or if the trial court did something incorrectly, and our court needs to correct that or send it back for the trial court to reconsider different pieces.
Okay, so I just want to remind our listening audience that Friday, October 14th, is the last day to register register to vote. And if you missed that, early voting starts October 20th. And with the one-stop early voting, you can have an opportunity also to register to vote and vote. And early voting ends November 5th, and we do know that early voting can determine a race. And the last day and the general election day is Tuesday, November the 8th. We also would like to let our listening audience know that if you missed this or you want to catch up more on the interview, you have an opportunity to download the Awesome Radio app, and you can play it, and it'll be up on YouTube also. So you'll have an opportunity to share this out from now until Election Day. Also, just want to let you have an opportunity also, Ms. Julie Lee Flood, to tell the listening audience again how they can be in touch with you. Just tell them and tell them how they can get in touch.
Sure. I do have a website. It's my name, julieflood.com, and that's Julie spelled Julee, so julieflood.com. I'm also on Facebook at Julie Flood for Judge, North Carolina Court of Appeals. There's also Instagram. I'm out there on all different social media resources, and people are welcome to go into my website or those other resources and learn more about me, read more about me. I can also be emailed at info@julieflood.com. And I just really appreciate people reaching out to me if they have additional questions, or if they would like to help, or if they just want to know a little bit more about my perspective and philosophy and ability to serve them and desire to serve.
Okay. And then also Awesome Radio, because they are so very passionate about educating the voter. So tonight we're also going to be having a candidate forum. I don't know if you know about that. You're welcome to come,
Thank you.
but you really are going to be out there right now.
Yes, that's great.
Yeah. So you told us something about you. You spoke on term limits. What about some closing remarks? What is your last words or many words to our listening audience?
Sure. I believe that I have the most direct, relevant, unequaled experience in preparation for a judicial seat on the Court of Appeals. And that direct experience is that I have worked in appellate courts over the past 20 years, writing for 9 jurists, judges, and justices at the federal and state appellate level. That means that I understand the workings of the court, the institution. I understand the retrospective viewpoint that an appellate court has. We're not trying to sit as trial court judges again. We have a retrospective viewpoint. I believe in consistency and predictability in the law, which is why I am a textualist. I am certainly committed to treating each person with dignity and respect, as is mandated not only by who I am and my own faith, but also it aligns very squarely with the judicial branch mission. I have the academic prowess and the background and the currency in the law and the facility with the law to serve with excellence. I have no political agenda. I don't believe that I should be a legislator in a black robe. I believe that, in fact, I shed any aspects of a political background when I walk through those courtroom doors. It's what I've seen and witnessed within the court over the last 20 years, the different courts. It's also how I behave. And again, as exhibited through people of all, jurists of all different backgrounds, asking me to work with them as an attorney. I'm really passionate about serving my community in different ways. I'm passionate about serving the bar, and I have been doing that for years. And then one of my really strong passions is serving law students and those who are new to the court or new to the legal system with their either a new law degree or students who are excellent students and who are pursuing paths of appellate work. I really thoroughly enjoy working with students and have enjoyed that over the time. I certainly want to protect and preserve the rights of all people who come before the court, and admire voters who are really listening and paying attention. And I just so appreciate the opportunity to share my background and my message, because I think being informed as to the people who are representing the voters, I just think that's crucial to our system, our republic, our system of justice.
Okay. Well, this has been Meet the Candidate. Again, my name is Renee Boston Hill, and we had the pleasure today to speak with Miss Julee Flood. She's the Republican Party nominee for the NC Court of Appeals, seat 8. And I will say that, I do know that you have an opponent. We invited all judges and candidates to come on, and we're still waiting to hear from her. But we so appreciate you taking the time to meet with us and to talk with us today. Again, okay, though we still have some time. So
okay. Oh, all right, good. I thought we were wrapping up there. All right, great.
Well, I want the listening audience and the audience to know exactly as much information as they can. And is there anything that I forgot to ask you that you would like to add to this interview?
I can't think of anything right now. I'm
okay. All righty. And well, we can talk again about the important dates. This Friday, October 14th, voter registration forms must be postmarked or delivered to your county board of elections by 5 p.m. So again, listening audience, our viewers out there, please register to vote. Every vote counts, and some people just win by one vote. So that, we want an influx of voting this time. Early voting starts again October 20th. And if you don't register to vote by October 14th, what you can do is register at the One Stop Early Voting, and then you can also vote. You need to contact each one of your county board of elections to find out where the voting sites will be. And if you wait till November the 8th, you're going to need to know your exact polling place. And you can do that by keying in ncsbe.gov to look up. One of the things we want to make sure that you don't wait, you have a plan. Again, you continue to educate yourself of all the candidates that are running, and that, again, it's just so important that you become educated and know why you're posting a vote for a particular candidate.
Right. One of the things, if we have time, that your listeners might like to hear, we heard about how cases get to the appellate court, but with what happens once the cases are there, if we have a few minutes.
We do.
Okay. After someone files an appeal, there is a team of staff attorneys who make sure that all the components are there for the case. And then those cases are randomly assigned to what we call judicial panels. So there's some sort of algorithm And out of the 15 judges who are on the Court of Appeals, they sit in panels of 3. So judges 1, 3, and 8 might be sitting together one panel, and the next time it might be judges 2, 10, and 12 that are sitting. And so there's an algorithm that makes sure, based on the statutes, our laws of North Carolina, that makes sure that they all sit in approximately the same amount of times and with the same mix up of the different panels of judges. And so it's not like someone is sitting there and thinking, this case needs to go to this panel, or this case. It's all done by an algorithm, by a mathematical formula that assigns the cases randomly to the different panels and equally to the different panels throughout the year. So sometimes I think people might wonder how it gets to be that certain judges hear certain cases, and it really is a random selection process. And then that panel of 3 judges makes the decision on that set of cases that comes to that panel. So I think that's a question that I get sometimes out on the campaign trail, is how those cases get there. So your listeners might like to know that.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
All right, so we're wrapping up now. Meet the candidate, and thank you, Ms. Flood, for joining
Election
us.
Day is November 8th. Early voting begins October 20th. Do you know the candidate?